Why it's so important to have that durable power of attorney is that ensures that your voice will be heard, that you have thought through with the help of your attorney what authority you are going to be giving under your durable power of attorney to that appointed agent whom you trust. With that document in place, the durable power of attorney, you should not ever be subject to a court-ordered guardianship yourself if you were to lose capacity. It's probably the most important thing you can do for yourself to make sure that, nobody wants to think of a loss of control over their life. But nonetheless, I have to tell you, as lawyers, we plan for what if this happens? Have a good durable power of attorney in place. So if that unthinkable thing does happen, at least you know somebody that you really trust will step up and take care of things for you, and it won't be the court messing with your business. One of the things that I think that goes to keep control over your life is if you're a single person, everything I said is true. If you're a married person, I said, if you have a good durable power of attorney, you can keep the court out of your life. Well, that's maybe true, maybe not true. Let me tell you why. If you're married, your spouse also needs to have a good durable power of attorney in place, because if your spouse loses capacity, if they lose the ability to manage their own affairs, you might think, because I'm married to that person now, I can manage their affairs, especially because we own our home together. We're both on title to our home. Therefore, I can be in charge, right? Wrong. Joint titling of an asset does not necessarily mean you can control the other owner's ownership of that asset. And you can't control your incapacitated spouse's ownership of your home. So this is a very unpleasant surprise for spouses, especially ones that haven't paid any attention or much attention to their estate plan, and one of them becomes incapacitated. So let me tell you what happens when a spouse loses capacity and they didn't have any durable power of attorney. What happens is there will be a court-ordered guardianship and conservatorship over your spouse, over their person, and over their finances, over their assets, over everything in their life. Now, you as a spouse may be appointed as their guardian and their conservator, or perhaps you won't be. It could be somebody else who will be appointed. Imagine the situation where maybe it's a blended family, second marriage, children from another marriage, assets from the earlier marriage. That incapacitated spouse, they may have other family members who say, oh, I want to be the guardian. I want to be the conservator. I want to be in charge of dad's affairs, for example. And you are the spouse and you're saying, no, I want to be in charge. And you might not be appointed. It's not uncommon that you won't be appointed. What does that mean? That means with respect to not just your spouse's affairs, but yours too, because your and your spouse's assets can be blended together. You have joint accounts, a joint house, joint all sorts of things. And now you and how you spend your money and what you do with your money, you're not free to do it. The court has to give you permission to do certain things. To sell the house? No, you can't do that. It's your house, but it's also your incapacitated spouse's house. So you can't sell your house without a court order and without the guardian or conservator being on board. So when I'm talking about keep control over your life, if you are married, it is very important that not just you, but your spouse have a durable power of attorney for finances. Now, typically spouses appoint each other, but that doesn't have to be the case. The spouse could appoint, a child from a prior marriage, but there are problems with that. It's much easier if you can trust each other enough that you can be in charge of your own finances or the other person's finances. But that is one of the key ways that you can keep control over your life if something bad happens to your spouse and they lose capacity. Don't let their finances, their personal care, which impacts your life, which means your finances, be in a court setting with the court making decisions about what you can do. So durable powers of attorney, not just for yourself, but also for your spouse. They need to have one as well. And it should be a good one. I just gave you an example of what happens if your spouse doesn't have any power of attorney. But what if their power of attorney was prepared either on their own or by an attorney who was not experienced in estate planning and particularly in elder law? What happens then if it is a bad power of attorney? Let's not say bad, an inadequate power of attorney. Let me give you an example of a situation that I'm familiar with. In this particular situation, what happened was it was a remarriage, and both spouses did get durable powers of attorney, but the husband wanted to make sure that his new spouse didn't have too much access to all of his finances. So he appointed her as well as his adult son from a prior marriage as co-attorneys. In fact, co meaning in the situation, they weren't empowered to act independently. They had to agree on everything. And they agreed on nothing. Because of that, because there was not a path forward for how to manage this incapacitated gentleman's affairs, there needed to be a guardianship over this gentleman. So when I'm saying an inadequate power of attorney, what I want you to think through and what I want your attorney to think through is it a really good idea to appoint the new wife and the son from the prior marriage as co-attorneys, in fact, to jointly agree and make decision? Well, if they were going to agree, it's not bad, but you have to plan for worst case scenario. And it was pretty obvious in this case that they weren't going to agree. So be aware of who and you're appointing as your attorney, in fact, and don't set up the situation for a failure, which is what happened in that case. So your durable powers of attorney are the most important. I've been focusing on finances more so than anything else, but you do also need a durable power of attorney for healthcare in order to be able to keep control over your life. A durable power of attorney for healthcare is where you appoint the person, your POA, your agent, healthcare agent. Who is that? That's that person who speaks for you and is your voice and will make sure your voice is heard, your wishes are carried out in the event you can't do so. And this doesn't have to be like a dementia type incapacity or stroke. This is maybe you're undergoing surgery and so you're incapacitated and there's going to be questions that come up because of complications during the surgery. Make sure you have that person designated under your durable power of attorney for healthcare that knows you and will be your voice and will speak for you. That's really important to make sure that you keep control over your life.